Hi, this is Jeff DiMatteo of Gridiron Ratings, and you're listening to the Dynasty Hot Seat.
Yes, hello everybody, and welcome back once again to the Dynasty Hot Seat, the only Dynasty show out there that is a certified inferno. And today we are back, brand new guests. Love it when we get new guests on the show, first time guests. We're looking forward to this for a while. We've got Jeff DiMatteo on the show. You can find him over on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call that at NFL_DiMatteo. Jeff is one of the best minds in the game. He is actually the founder of the Gridiron Ratings system as well, so make sure you're going to check that out as well. Jeff, I've been looking forward to this for a while. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm thrilled to be here. Really appreciate you inviting me on.
Yeah, it's great how obviously we had Ronnie on the show a few months ago. He's had high praises for you, so absolutely going to be listening to anything Ronnie says after he absolutely crushed it on here. But Jeff, you're going to do even better, right?
I mean, no pressure, right? I mean, I've got Ronnie building me up here, and we've got, I got to live up to that and try to exceed it, And so when he watches the show, I'll make sure to needle him a little bit as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll hop in on that as well. Actually, that'll be a good lot of fun. And thank you to everybody who is joining. If you're joining for the first time, hey, welcome along. You know how this works on the YouTube game, right? We want those likes, we want those subscribes, and all that. Hey, we're pretty close to getting up to that 500 number. That was a target that we wanted by the end of the month. Hey, you could be the 500th subscriber. Imagine that. What a great life achievement that would be. So why not hit that subscribe button and let's get this party started. Jeff, we're going to chat about these 2024 rookies. We are going to, in a little bit, get jumping right into a mock draft. But before that, we're just going to take a general overview, a look at the class as a whole. And Jeff, is there anything that you've seen with this class compared to maybe other classes? I know you've got more of a unique way. We were chatting off air at looking at some of these prospects as well, right?
Yeah, so I always try to compare prospects when they come into the previous two classes and the upcoming class that's going to come in. I want to see how they fit into the greater fantasy ecosystem. And then once I've kind of figured that out, then it's a matter of identifying how they fit into the NFL structure. This class and the way it fits in, it's insanely deep at a litany of positions. We hear about the quarterbacks and the wide receivers, but defensive players are really deep. There's a lot of deep offensive linemen. Tight end has a couple of really high end assets. It's going to be a really interesting group for Dynasty, regardless of how you play. And that's what's got me so excited.
Yeah, I think this running back class is like getting a bit of flack, but there's actually a lot of like really good sort of second tier guys here. We just don't have that super elite upper end guy. Is that what you've noticed with the running back class as well?
Yeah, when we get into the mock, I think we might surprise some people with how early a couple of those guys go. There's a few of them I really, really like. But yeah, it doesn't have like the Bijan Robinson or a Jahmyr Gibbs like we've seen. It doesn't have like that guy that you can lean on to make him like the first pick in your draft. But there's a lot of guys that are going to get considerable NFL snaps, and they're going to be really effective. Some very efficient players that do a lot of different things, and they're going to command a lot of snaps at the next level. And I think that's going to be the thing where someone's going to steal some of these running backs, put them on their rosters, and be really happy for the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been saying the last couple of weeks as well. I think where we are now and seeing mock drafts now, they'll look so different after the draft because we're going to see these running backs go to situations, and then we're all kind of going to remember the state of the running back situation in the NFL right now. The actual players and actual teams, not great, like not good. There's a lot of chances for these guys to come in and make a role for themselves, right?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, the attrition's a real thing at the running back position, and we see it every year. You start getting into weeks 10, 11, 12, 13, fantasy playoff time. And what happens? It's guys that you had to grab off the waiver wire. It's bottom of the roster dudes that are suddenly starting and making an impact. That's why it's so important to try and find that depth for your dynasty roster. I'm not so worried about handcuffing as much as I'm just trying to put as much talent in that collection of players as I can because, the cream always rises to the top. And, some of these guys are going to end up being a guy at the end of the upcoming season.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So Well, without further ado, then let's chat about some of these guys, right? Let's pull up this mock draft board, and Jeff, you've done an absolute killer job collecting these 24 picks because you get to make every single one here. So congratulations on that, first of all. So we're going to start in. It is Superflex. It is non-tight end premium. We're going to jump in with pick 1-1. Jeff, is this a difficult decision for you, or do you think if you have any 1-1 picks in Superflex leagues, you're going to make the same choice every single time?
I'm actually split here.
Hmm.
And so we are going quarterback, and you have Caleb Williams, the presumptive number one pick in the draft, probably
Yeah.
going to Chicago. If he's going to have Keenan Allen, he's going to have DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, plenty of weapons there. Obviously, the collegiate numbers make sense. He looks like a near generational prospect. I don't think he's generational. There's still a few holes in his game, but I'm going to go
Yeah.
Caleb Williams this time around. The number two guy we'll talk about in a minute, but Caleb is going to give you everything you hope to have in a franchise level quarterback, minus the elite size. He does force some bad positions occasionally, failing out of the pocket before it's actually collapsed, but he's got great accuracy, great arm strength, plenty of athleticism. He's probably not going to run for 6, 7, 800 yards, but he's going to give you enough that he's going to be a QB1 type of a player for a long time.
Yeah, that is really interesting. You brought up that about the generational prospect because I've been asking a couple of guests on the shows, like, do you think that Caleb is a generational prospect? Because I always said after, I was like, he's really close, but he's not quite. So it's quite interesting. We're both like on the same wavelength there with a Caleb Williams. Obviously, got a hell of a lot of talent, but yeah, not quite that And also, I'm a bit of a stickler for like grammar and words. Stuff. It's like if he's generational, we can't have like 3 generational quarterbacks in 10 years. That's not right.
That's exactly where I'm at. And I think about the last 40 years. Who are the guys that have gotten that tag? And you think about John Elway, when he
Yeah.
was drafted by the Colts, traded to the Broncos. You think about the Peyton Mannings, Andrew Luck, even Trevor Lawrence had that generational tag
Yeah.
coming out. Think, okay, here's four guys in 40 years. Does he really live up to that prospect profile? And I think the answer is no, despite the Heisman Trophy and all the other awards. He just didn't do quite enough, and he's not as polished as some of those guys were coming out, regardless of what they did in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, but still no arguments from me taking him 1-1. Absolutely. So you said you were split on this as well. So maybe sometimes you wouldn't go with Caleb at 1-1. Who are you taking at 1-2 then, and presumably the other guy who you might take over him sometimes?
Hey, Jaden Daniels. Uh, this guy is a Konami code,
Yeah.
and the fact that he can go out and run for 1,000 yards and potentially still throw for 3,800 or more is going to give him a ton of fantasy. And I don't think touchdowns are going to be an issue. Really, for me, it comes down to landing spot, right? They don't
Hmm.
necessarily want to see him go somewhere like New England, but if he can go to Washington, where he's got Terry
Yeah.
McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and a couple of those guys, that offense isn't as bad off as it might seem. He can come in and make a fantasy impact right away. If you liked Anthony Richardson and what he does, Jaden Daniels, not as big, but you know what? He's a more refined passer. He does a better job of using the entire field, and he's got way more top end speed and agility. So
Yeah.
if you like Richardson, you should love Daniels. I think he's going to be a fantasy dynamo. I absolutely love
So today I was shouting from the rooftops about Cody Schrader, right? Because he's one of my favorite guys, Jeff, right? And I was saying Cody Schrader is the leading rusher in the SEC, and no one even seems to talk about it. He's 500 yards ahead of everybody else. But then I was looking at the numbers. Jaden Daniels finished third. He was the third highest rusher in the SEC last year. I can't remember the last time a quarterback has done anything like that. Can you? That is crazy.
And don't forget college football. If you have sack yards, they take those yards
Yeah.
out of your rushing total.
Yeah.
So what would he have done without the sack yards?
Yeah, he is a phenomenal talent. I can't wait to see him playing. I mean, Commanders would obviously be a really cool spot, although we have to be careful about that danger guy Kingsbury, right? He's got a bit of an issue. I think he had Mahomes in college, right? Did nothing with Patrick Mahomes in college. He had Caleb Williams just last year, Caleb's worst year. He seems to be what's the opposite of a whisperer? He's like a quarterback shouter, right? Is that the opposite of a whisperer?
He's like quarterback kryptonite. He's here
Yeah.
to just to kill them. But to be fair, Kyler Murray was still able to put up some really good fantasy years for him, and so that's what we're talking about here is fantasy. So will Jaden Daniels be a Hall of Famer under Kingsbury? Probably not. But could it be a fantasy dynamo? Definitely still in the cards.
Yeah, absolutely right with you there, Jeff. So we got two quarterbacks locked in at pick number 1 and 2 in the Superflex draft. at pick number 3, are you staying with quarterback? Are you going for that third guy, or are you moving to another position?
No, we're going to pivot here. Just because the wide receiver position has become so valuable, and not just in
Yeah.
fantasy, but in real football. Marvin Harrison Jr. is one of the best receiver prospects I've seen in a very long time. He's
Yeah.
very polished. He's fast. He's got great hands. He's excellent at the catch point. The only knock I have on this guy is he doesn't really take care of himself. He gets hit
Hmm.
way too frequently, where he's in a position where he's always going for the ball, regardless of danger being present and close. And so he needs to take care of himself at the next level, or he won't have a very long career. But give me Maserati Marv for that first receiver off the board.
Yeah, and Harrison, for me, unlike with Williams, I'm quite happy to put the generational stamp on Marvin Harrison Jr. Are you happy to do that as well, Jeff?
I think so. The only trouble I have with it this year and with him is that the number two guy is 99% of him. And
Right.
I find it really difficult to put that tag on two players, especially in the same class. It just feels very conflicted to me. So there's only one player that I've really felt like I can drop the generational tag on him in this class, and he's not a wide receiver. We'll get to him a little later, but you know, it, I, it's close. I would say he's closer to being generational than Caleb is at quarterback.
Mhm. Yeah, and Harrison, any worries for you about landing spot with him? Or are you happy to take him at 3 no matter where?
I feel like he's quarterback proof.
Yeah.
It's just going to be a matter of flavor. And so some teams are going to prefer Harrison over Neighbors, Neighbors over Harrison. Some guys might like Roma Dunze, but Harrison feels quarterback proof. Drop him in. He's going to get open. He's going to catch the ball if it's in his zip code. So I'm happy to take him here.
Yeah, absolutely right with you there on Marvin Harrison. And moving on to pick number 4, you said there was a guy there that's 99% of Marvin Harrison. Is that where he comes in, or has he been split by another
Yeah,
quarterback here?
we're going wide receiver again. We're going to go Malik Neighbors here.
Yeah.
You know, another guy where he's a little different profile. Good catch and run guy, can get open deep. He does a great job against double coverage.
Yeah.
The one thing I kept noticing when I tried to watch Jaden Daniels, when I tried to watch Neighbors, even trying to watch Brian Thomas, is that when you see Neighbors on the film, he's always drawing a crowd and somehow still makes catches and gets open. Contested catch capacity, ability to get open regardless of how many people are around you, critical skills at the next level. He has both, does them in spades, doesn't have the same concern that Harrison does regarding, hey, does he take care of himself? But he also doesn't have the same pedigree and NFL background that Harrison does. That's why I say he's 99% of Marvin Harrison. But it's stylistically, if you're a coach or a GM, it's a matter of, it's like ice cream, man. Which flavor do you like better? It's all great.
Yeah.
And but give me Neighbors here at 4.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting. These first 4 guys sort of, you know, absent at the NFL Combine, right? Didn't really see much out of any of these guys. If nothing really happens to their draft capital, Jeff, do you think that's going to set a trend going forward for the elite guys coming out that they're just not going to bother with the combine?
I think so. This year is a little different. You think about teams never want to trade out of the top 5. We always get 4 or
Hmm.
5 guys that show up that won't show up to the combine or don't work out. They're always the elite guys, right?
Hmm.
This class, the top 10 is kind of like the normal top 5. There's
Yeah.
so many very good elite, top prospects available in this class that that's why I think it was so much more prominent, right? Because you didn't see any of the receivers, you didn't see half the quarterbacks. Like none of these guys showed up, and a lot of those guys are top 10 picks this year, and a lot of them would have been in contention for number one last year. And so, do I think it's a trend? Potentially, but I think we're always going to see it from the top 5 to potentially 10 players.
Yeah. Yeah. And these 4 are definitely in that elite tier for sure. So who's coming right after them at pick number 5 in the first round for you?
So, this is a certified inferno, right?
It
We're
is
going
indeed.
hot here.
Yeah.
I think I might be getting a little toasty with this one. I'm going back to quarterback, but I'm taking JJ McCarthy out of Michigan. McCarthy
Yes.
is a super twitched up player at the quarterback position. He's not Lamar Jackson, doesn't have that kind of long speed, but he's got great agility, great reaction times. He has plenty of arm strength, good accuracy. He wasn't asked to do much at Michigan, but if you watch the cut ups and you just watch his throws, the kid is accurate and he's
Yep.
gutsy. He has no trouble ripping one into a tight window. And you know what? Ask Roman Wilson how his hands feel after catching some of those passes. The guy can
Yeah.
throw it with some steam, and that translates exceptionally well to almost every team in the NFL. And so to me, I could see him landing in a place like Minnesota and becoming an immediate fantasy impact with Jefferson and Addison and some of the other guys they have now if Hawk comes back from his injury. I absolutely love it. I'm assuming he goes to a great landing spot. So give me McCarthy here at 5.
I love it. That's what this show is all about, Jeff. Right? It's all about bringing that heat, bringing that fire, and we've really seen it develop. I remember from the very first mock draft we did here, even before the regular season finished. I kept saying it's like, look out for JJ McCarthy. There's no way JJ McCarthy is going to keep slipping because there will be teams that are going to fall in love with him. Just the way that he comes in and he's like already super professional, right? He goes in, he runs that system, he does what he's meant to do. Maybe he hasn't been asked to do too much, but what else can you do? He just does his job, right? He can't really do what he's not been told to, right, Jeff?
Exactly. And that's where I try not to get hung up on the things he wasn't asked to do. And I see, okay, well, when I'm watching the film, what is he asked to do and does he do that well? Because if you're doing the things you're asked to do very well, generally that shows some level of coachability. And if you're coachable, that helps you develop at the next level. Like that means you're going to be a better fit. You're probably not going to be at odds with your coach. You're not going to be getting benched for silly reasons. I love these guys, especially when he's a younger prospect. A lot of these
Yeah.
prospects this year are a little bit older. He's not. He's the baby of the group. Give me that youth. Give me the upside. Give me all the traits. I love it, especially there at 5. I think he could be going 3 in a lot of rookie mocks before it's over.
Yeah, especially if you met that Minnesota landing spot. You pair him up with the weapons over at Minnesota there, then yeah, I think you're right. There is a world where he can jump right up there in the Superflex draft for sure. So who's following JJ McCarthy at pick number 6 then?
Wide receiver is so deep. We're going back there again because the talent at the top is just incredible. Give me
Yeah.
Washington wide receiver Rome Odunze.
Yeah.
Bigger bodied guy. He played with 2 other very good receivers in McMillan and Polk.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Mike Penix is an excellent college quarterback, but Odunze shines. When you get him on the film, he gets open in any given situation. He can go up and get the football. He climbs the ladder as well as anybody in this class. And when you think about bigger bodied receivers that can profile as a legitimate kind of X alpha type guy, give him to me. Gotta have him. And the fact that he's available at 6 in a Superflex Dynasty draft is a
Yeah.
screaming value.
Yeah, absolutely. This is normally like pick 5, 6. This is normally where you see the first wide receiver come off the board. Like this is where players like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson were going whenever they were coming out. So just because he's going at 6 doesn't mean that he's a bad player at all. It just shows you how good the other players in this class are. And Odunze, I wouldn't be maybe you'd be more shocked than me, Jeff, but if come draft day, Rome Odunze has taken over Malik Neighbors, I wouldn't be too shocked actually, would you?
Not really. And a lot of it, again, it kind of comes down to flavor, right? Like what
Yeah.
kind of receiver are you looking for? What's the landing right? Does Dunze go somewhere where he's going to get funneled a ton of targets and Neighbors maybe go somewhere that's questionable? These things obviously have to play into that valuation. At this juncture, all things being equal, though, I think if you can get a Dunze at 6, I mean, you're laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah. And this is an interesting one with Odunze and a couple of other guys in this class. A lot of people, their big knock on Odunze and some other people who might get to later is this late breakout age. How much do you factor that into a player's profile when you're looking at them?
It's like a 1 to 2% factor in the overall
Yeah.
grade. I think it matters to a point, but what you have to remember, what's different about the last 3 or 4 years versus any time before that is that we're dealing with the COVID year where a lot of teams were shut
Yeah.
down, extra years of eligibility were granted. So a lot of these guys, that breakout isn't happening at 2021. It's happening at 22, 23.
Yep.
It's just a function of the kid's career was delayed. And so it's not a matter of his skill. And so sometimes you have to take that information and look at it within the context of the bigger picture, right? What happened in his whole career? It's not like he had ACL injuries or he was benched for academic reasons or he just wasn't very good at football. Like the world shut down.
Yeah.
So there's nothing you can do about that. I'm not worried about it. I'm kind of throwing that out for all these kind of what I'm calling the COVID babies, right? Uh, I'll get back into looking at that early breakout age more by the time we get to 2025, 26, 27.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you with Odunze. It's sort of something you might go, oh yeah, but I mean he did break out. When he did break out, he was really good, and that is what matters
Right.
way more than when he broke out, right?
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we got Odunze locked in at 6. Who's following up Rome Odunze at pick number 7?
So this is my one definitely generational player in this class. I'm going with Brock Bowers, the tight end out of Georgia. He's my highest rated player, regardless of position, in this draft class. The guy does it all. He
Yeah.
blocks, he catches, he runs, he takes handoffs, he takes jet sweeps, he gets his hands on the football, he breaks tackles, he scores touchdowns. The guy is an absolute machine. He doesn't look pretty doing it. He's not Kyle Pitts. Some of these other guys they run like gazelles and all this. This guy is a football player, piles up yards, first downs, and touchdowns. That's what he does. And it's all over his film, regardless of opponent difficulty, regardless of big game. He was the guy in that Georgia offense and on that Georgia roster that really kept their success level at such a high level. I don't know what they're going to do this year without him, but man, Brock Bowers is a legitimate tight end that does all of it well. And I know some people like Pitts as a generational prospect and some of these other guys. I was never there on Pitts with being generational. I actually got lambasted on Twitter. My one viral tweet in the world was me telling people not to take him over Cooper Kupp his rookie year. That was also the year Cooper Kupp won the Triple Crown. And so I got absolutely filleted for that. But I digress. Brock Bowers at the 107. I don't care if it's tight end premium. Difference maker at tight end. Look at Travis Kelce the last few years. Having him on your roster is a force multiplier. Brock Bowers is going to be that guy. Get him on your roster.
Right, Jeff, I've got a crazy hypothetical for you. You ready?
Okay.
Okay. So let's say we change the rules of this draft. And now this does become tight end premium. I'm given a whole point extra per reception. And Brock Bowers is going to land on this Chargers team that is just hemorrhaging receiving talent. How high do you take him then?
Superflex, additional point per reception for tight ends. He's in the conversation in the first three. He could go one. So my buddy Jordan Vanek, I used to work for 33rd team when they still had a fantasy department over there. He and I talk about Bowers all the time. I think 5 with the Chargers is exactly where he should be going because he's probably not getting out of the 10 or 12 picks. He makes fun of me. He says, "No, it's paying too much for a tight end." I'm like, I don't care. Give me the force multiplier on my roster. I don't care what I'm paying the guy. Get him in here. If I've got quarterbacks already in that super flex draft, or even if I'm serviceable at quarterback, I'm taking Bowers. If I'm completely depleted at quarterback, I'll probably take Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams over. But that's it. It's a very short list.
Yeah, he is something special. I cannot wait to see where he ends up and where he goes. But yeah, I'm with you. I think Chargers, that just sounds right. This feels about right. Especially they just got rid of Gerald Everett as well, right? It's sort of like, okay. I can see where this is going. So Bowers locked in there at 7. What a class that you can get Brock Bowers at 7. So following up at 8, there's still plenty of talent on the board still at pick 8. So where are you going?
We're going back to quarterback here. I think whoever's sitting at 8 in a real draft is howling because they're getting Drake May right here. And Drake May has the size, he's got the arm strength, a little bit of a big play hunter. I think it's what some people have identified. I don't know if I completely agree with that, but the scheme didn't help. The players around him didn't help much. Devontae, Johnson, the receiver they got after 5 or 6 games, people kept telling me to watch this kid. He's not very good. I'm out there. I didn't see a single receiver on this roster that's going to play on Sundays, at least not in a considerable way, for Drake May to put up any kind of numbers. Year before, 2022, he looked great. He can run, he can throw, he's got all the tools. Kind of looks like a Justin Herbert type to me. Some people said Josh Allen. I don't think he's that proficient as a runner. I don't think he's that good in the open field.
No.
I think he's more like a Herbert. Size, speed, arm strength, all that kind of stuff kind of lines up really favorably. So give me Drake May here at 8. I think he can start for somebody. He's got a good head on his shoulders too. Doesn't mind sitting for a year. Understands the history behind certain guys sitting for a year and their success. Brought that up at the combine. Talking about guys like Mahomes and Jackson and these guys and all their Super Bowls and MVPs, and they did it. If they're not too good for it, then he's not too good for it. I thought that was a really interesting message. Shows a lot of humility and a lot of self-awareness. I expect he's going to end up off the board pretty early, but I wouldn't be shocked if he was QB4 off the board in the real draft.
Yeah, I think he'll go about. It's going to be real. And him and JJ McCarthy, I can't quite I can't quite figure out who's going to go before each other in the real draft. It's going to be really interesting. And I was listening to a podcast that was kind of talking about quarterbacks sitting and waiting, and it was a Green Bay Packers fan, and he was sort of chatting about how everyone seems to say the Packers get so lucky, like getting all of these quarterbacks in a row, and it's like, is it luck or is it that they all have like this thing in common where they sat behind the previous generational guy and learned for years from them, and then have come in and sort of kept that ball rolling. So there is definitely some method to that, like you said, like a Patrick Mahomes that did sit for a year, and like this Jordan Love and like Aaron Rodgers, all these guys sat and learned it, and I think sometimes it's fine to play the slow game in the NFL, especially with quarterback. These guys play it till they're like 50 now. So yeah, you can give them some time, right, Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and when I think about like the Packers method, right? They get lucky with Favre. I mean, they pulled him in a trade
Yeah.
from Atlanta. He didn't really get to sit because Don Mikowski, the guy that was in front of him, frankly wasn't very good. He got hurt.
Yeah.
Favre just got thrown in the fire. They got lucky there, but then yeah, having Rodgers sit, Rodgers should have been the first pick in that draft. There was a lot of conversation that year between Alex Smith and Aaron Rodgers.
Hmm.
And I'm a 49ers fan. So for me, when I looked at that, when we took Alex Smith, I thought I was going to collapse. I was like, why didn't we take Rodgers? He's literally went to Cal. He was right in our
Yeah.
backyard. What's going on? And Jordan Love, I wasn't high on him, but again, you let these guys sit, you let them mature, let them marinate a little bit, and man, I'll tell you, they come out firing, ready to go when it's showtime. And Jordan Love showed us that this past season. I'm definitely pro on that guy.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. So Drake May, not the worst if he ends up sitting. You still take him here at pick number 8 or even
Absolutely.
higher if you wanted to with Drake May. And where
Sure.
for me, Jeff, this is a tier break for me. I think there's 8 sort of really, really good guys. And then this is where it becomes a little bit of Wild West country here because I've seen all kinds of picks from 9 onwards. So I can't wait to see where you're going.
So I tend to agree with that. This next group, the next 4 players to me are all interchangeable. So whether you like them at 8 or 12 is whatever. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
what's your flavor, right? For the sake of this mock and for where I think players might land, I'm going to go with Keon Coleman out of Florida State. I'm taking him at 9 here. A lot of people are finding warts on this guy. A lot of people are trying to find reasons not to like him. In the last several weeks or so. To me, on the NFL side, this feels like smoke. It feels like people
Mm.
trying to depress his value a little bit. They want to get him a little bit later. But if he goes at the end of the first or the early second, how upset are you going to be if Keon Coleman ends up going 32 to Kansas City? I know they just got Hollywood Brown. Irrelevant.
Mhm.
We know what he is. He's not that good.
Yeah.
So you're going to be pretty excited to get a playmaker who can get down the field and make people miss in the open field when you suddenly have Patrick Mahomes throwing to Coleman and Brown, She Rice. You're going to want to be a part of that Chiefs offense. Give me Coleman. Or he could go out there and he can end up in a lot of other places. San Francisco. The guy does it after the catch. They love those guys. And so Brandon Ayuk's in a contract year. We don't know if he's coming back. So Keon Coleman could end up in that back end of the first round, early second round position where, you know what? He's going to get into either a really premium spot with a great offense, or he's going to end up in a spot that is receiver starved and he's going to get funneled targets. I kind of like both those for fantasy. Give me Keon Coleman here.
Yeah, Keon Coleman, I cannot figure him out. Like, if he gets that draft capital low, I can't just stick to what I'm saying. Like, I can't just be like, oh, I don't like this guy, and then he gets drafted in the first round, and I'm just going to ignore that, right? I think that's something a lot of people do, right? They kind of get really like wedged in on their belief on a player and don't change it no matter what happens at combines or draft day or preseason or anything like that. So currently at the minute, I'm not as high on Keon Coleman as you, but I think something that maybe more people in the dynasty community need to do is be willing to sort of change what their opinion is. So yeah, if he goes to like Kansas, I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan, so of course I'll change my mind immediately if he goes there. Like he'll be going way higher than this Jeff. So yeah, I'm always willing to change on Keon Coleman. The one thing that does concern me is he disappeared the back end of that season. He had more 20-yard games than hundreds, which is really bizarre, right?
Well, now some of that is we review the context of the offense and what was happening in those games.
Yeah.
Jordan Travis obviously got hurt at the end there, so there was 2 games right at the end of the year where we're going to throw those out. because you had a backup quarterback. I can't grade that.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, the run pass splits changed pretty violently, and they decided they
Mm.
were going to get after it on the ground and go to Johnny Wilson underneath as opposed to letting Keon Coleman make some plays down the stretch. So for me, I wanted to see the games where he went against elite coverage. And so when you watch like the Clemson game where he just tore up guys like
Yeah.
Nate Wiggins is going to be a first round pick. I want to leverage talent because I can't count on college play calling.
Mm.
And so when you go back and you look at Keon Coleman, even back in his Michigan State days, he was a transfer. Check him out at Michigan State. The guy runs all the in breaking routes there. They just never threw it to him. And that's probably why he transferred. I was watching his cut ups and I'm like, he's open. They didn't throw it. He's open. They didn't throw it. It was embarrassingly bad quarterback play. He goes to
Mm.
Florida State. Jordan Travis, all due respect, not an NFL caliber player. Period. He'll probably have a great career in the UFL and good for him. Keon Coleman has all of the demonstrated ability from forcing missed tackles, from being able to make the catch at the catch point, going up the ladder, he can jump. He does everything you need. Has he had some drops? He has. Has he had some
Yeah.
other issues, in terms of contested catch? Yes. Everybody does, though. There's no perfect prospect. And at this point in the draft, we're talking about, hey, we're at pick 9, 10, 11, 12. Keon Coleman is a talent that still stands above a lot of the other players that are available right
Yeah, and he's the kind of guy that if someone said 12 months' time, Keon Coleman's actually the guy that scored the most fantasy points out of this wide receiver group in the first season, I'm not going to be like, there's no way that happens because he is that explosive raw athlete. There's 100% a chance there for Keon Coleman. I wouldn't also be shocked if they were like Keon Coleman never started a game either, and he just like never beat a
here.
three. He's one of those like absolute. Do you have Marmite in the States? Is that a thing? It's like a UK thing. Do you have a Marmite? No.
No, I'm not sure on that one. It might be a UK thing.
Yeah, Marmite is like this thing in the UK, and the whole thing is it's either like you love it or you hate it. It's like a spread
Mhm.
you put on toast, which is essentially like beef stock. It's not very nice, but like some people absolutely love it. So I feel like Keon Coleman is like the Marmite of that. I don't know what the United States equivalent of Marmite would be, but yeah, it's like this beefy yeast spread. Not great, not great. So, so anyway, moving on from Keon Coleman on to pick number 10. Who's following up Keon Coleman?
This guy's actually one of my favorite players in the entire draft. Um, I'm staying at wide receiver. We're going to go with Troy Franklin out of Oregon.
Yeah.
This guy, when you talk about a tough eval, for me, it's tough to identify what Oregon wants to do offensively because
Mm-hmm.
their identity is always so vertical and it's so wide open that it's hard to get a beat on the NFL pieces that translate to fantasy points and production and all of that. However, he has effortless speed, incendiary acceleration. He's got really good hands, and the guy does a nice job. People think he's a deep threat, and they kind of try to compare him to Quentin Johnston from last year. He actually can sink his hips and break on in breaking lanes.
Yeah.
And when I look at taller guys, those 6'2", 6'3", type guys, when they can sink their hips and break inside and play on a dig route, I get really excited because those guys aren't very common. And
Yeah.
there's very few guys, and I think about like when I watched Randy Moss when he was playing for Marshall, he had that ability where they didn't use him frequently enough doing it. You can see it on the highlights. Man, his ability to go ahead and stop and cut and explode out of the break to create separation was second to none. Did they need it very often? Not really, because he was 6'4" and ran 4'3" down the sideline right past everybody. But it's a unique skill that we don't see enough, and somebody's going to grab him in the draft, and it might not be until the maybe late first, but I'm thinking middle second round, where he's going to end up being a complementary receiver somewhere.
Yeah.
And he'll end up being that guy where we think about fantasy production and wide receiver twos. Think about a Devonta Smith. Think about a T. Higgins. Their kind of production. That's about where Troy Franklin lives, I think, on the production spectrum. I'm really happy to get him in the first. I'll take him at 9 all day long. Or
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 10 all day long. I
Yeah.
can't count today.
That's absolutely fine. It's Troy Franklin just gets you in a tiz, right? The guy's just got so much talent, you don't even know what number it is anymore, right?
Right, yeah. You just can totally like all my circuits blue. I think about them, I get all hot and bothered. Now I can't think of
Yeah.
the numbers anymore.
You know what? I'm so glad you brought up the fact that he is able to sink his hips because everywhere, a lot of places I look, that appears to be like a knock on Troy Franklin. People saying that he can't do that, and I don't agree. Yeah, so I'm really glad that you brought that up as one of his stronger suits because I think that's something he can definitely bring to the NFL. And you're right, it's not super common that guys of that stature can do that. The only thing I would maybe worry about is like he is a bit slight, so maybe some contested catches, but he's not really a guy that you throw it up for contested catch in the same way that you don't really use Tyreek Hill at contested catches. You throw it past the guy and he beats the guy around, right? So you're not necessarily using it that way anyway. So I don't really see it being too much of an issue for Franklin. Do you?
Not at all. So at the combine, Franklin had just gotten over having the flu. He measured
Yes.
really light. At the pro day, he came up to 184. 184 is good enough for me.
Yeah.
That's not. I'm not worried about his frame. If he comes in at a buck 84, because he plays about 184, 185, that's good enough. I'm fine with that because I don't want to imperil his speed, his agility, his acceleration, because that's his bread and butter, right?
Yeah.
That's where he's going to be able to go ahead and make those defenders, miss. They're going to up on skates. You think about Tyreek Hill, right? He's not tricking anybody. He's not beating people, vertically at the catch point. He's going out, he's catching that quick pass, and he's just outrunning everyone to the end zone. Troy Franklin has that same kind of ability. And I hear people on that, oh, he doesn't really sink his hips. Well, he wasn't asked too frequently enough. You have to look for those clips because more times than not, they had him going vertical and they had him on softer breaking routes, skinny posts and things like that,
Yeah.
where he's not having to sink. He wasn't running a lot of digs. He wasn't running a lot of ins or comebacks. But when he did, he was able to get down and create separation. Those routes were just few and far between.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's something I'd love to see a little bit more of him as well at the next level, which I imagine, most NFL teams will have a sort of more expansive route tree ready for him there. So I can't wait to see what he does. Great player to pick number 10 for sure. So you got two more picks left of the first round. Where are you going with your penultimate first round pick, Jeff?
I think we're staying wide receiver. The class is just so dang deep.
Yeah.
I can't get away from it. I'm going to go with the Donnie Mitchell here.
Nice.
This is a guy where, again, we talked about kind of that T. Higgins, Devonta Smith. He's going to be a wide receiver 2 with production type of a guy. Mitchell strikes me as a guy who's going to be a forever kind of wide receiver 3-ish, low 2, high 3.
Yeah.
That's not a bad value here, right? And so to me, that is a high floor. His ceiling is much higher. He gets into a spot where someone gets hurt and he can catch a bunch of passes. I think he'll be great. I don't know that he profiles, despite his measurables, as the X guy. I just don't see enough on his film to lead me to believe that he's going to get open frequently enough to be a security blanket for his quarterback. I do love the skill set. I love the size. I love his ability in the end zone, especially when they throw him that goal line fade. But he has enough holes where I'm like, ceiling might be capped. I'm happy to take him here simply because I know what I'm getting. And if I'm picking at 11, my team's already pretty good. I probably need to find a guy for some depth. That's exactly the role he fills on my dynasty roster.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, we spoke about it already, but this class, like, how many times do you have this many ticks on your sheet of attributes next to the wide receiver 6 in a class? Like, it's
Exactly.
just crazy, right? I think I've had people on before, it might have even been Ronnie, who just went, you know what? I'm going to draft only wide receivers. And he just only drafted wide receivers for the whole draft just to prove a point, like just to show you that you can do it. Like, there are so many of these guys here, and Mitchell is one that's going to make any NFL team absolutely better. So delighted to see him going in the first round. You got one more pick in the first round, Jeff. Who you going with?
Only because I couldn't see the position get shut out. I'm going running back here.
Yeah.
And I'm probably not taking the guy most people expect. I'm going Tennessee running back Jalen Wright. This guy is cat quick and he's got incredible long speed. There's just absolutely no doubt about his ability in terms of size and speed to play at the next level. Strikes me as kind of a Raheem Mostert type, which is perfect in today's NFL. I expect that he's going to go to a team that's going to allow him to really get going and create some space for him. I think about teams like Cincinnati, San Francisco, Houston. I start looking around. I know Houston already signed some guys. I know McCaffrey's in San Francisco, but this guy offers the type of big playability that he can step onto the field for 15 snaps a week, get 8 touches, and still give you 12 fantasy points. He's that quick. He also goes ahead and catches a bunch of passes. He's not quite, Jahmyr Gibbs, but you know what? He's a little bit bigger, and he has a lot of the same long speed and a lot of the same quickness. Not as polished of a receiver, but man, I love the skill set. He does a little bit of everything. I'm happy to take the big play potential here on this guy. Give me all the upside with Jalen.
I absolutely love this. Like, and I know Ronnie loves this too because his eyes are lit up whenever I mention Jalen Wright on the show. He is just phenomenal. I've said so many times, currently his overall ADP is around the third round. And I've said if it stays that way, he's going to be my most owned rookie by a country mile. Because if I'm in the third round and Jalen Wright is there, I'm trading up to get him. I'm doing everything I can because he is too good
I'm
to go there, right?
I'm not letting him get past the 2-6. If he's still
Yeah.
sitting there at 2-6, I'll sell out and go get that pick and go get him because we're going to get to a spot where after he's drafted and we start getting through like rookie OTAs and all that, people late drafting are going to get on the wagon probably too late, and that ADP is going to skyrocket. We think about guys like Devon Chan last year.
Yeah.
Everyone was pretty late to get on that wagon. He was like a mid late two in most drafts, and then all of a sudden everybody needed him on their rosters. He was a hot waiver wire pickup the whole bit. Same kind of thing. Doesn't have the same kind of worries about his size, and he forces a ton of missed tackles.
Yeah.
Gotta love it. The guy averaged 7 yards a carry last year, and over 4 of it was after contact. So people can talk about Tennessee soft box this and that. More than half of his yards per carry came after contact. So you can miss me with all that kind of analysis. So Jalen Wright, big playability. You love running backs who can give you that home run hit. That's my guy.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. I'd like to see Jalen Wright getting some love here. And now, this is what I'm going to say, Jeff. I'm going to timestamp this in here because I've made a little bit of mistake. I forgot to switch the draft thing. It's going in a sneak, right? But you know what's going to happen? Some guy in the comments is going to be like, "Oh, I can't believe he took this guy here," not realizing that it's a sneak. So I'm just going to timestamp it in and just post this in the comments to that like one dweeb who's like, "I can't believe Jeff took this guy here and didn't manage to read the actual number beside it." So just throwing it in there now. So it is sneaking round, Jeff. We're in the second round. What we're going to do? Can you give me like 3 players in a row that you would take at 2-1, 2-2, and 2-3, and then we'll maybe focus in on one to chat about?
Yeah, well, this is kind of where we start getting into that space where we're looking for, again, trying to find some upside, right? So give me Jonathan Brooks, running back out of Texas. Give me
Yep.
Ricky Pearsall, wide receiver out of Florida.
Yep.
And, and I think we're going to go Brian Thomas, wide receiver out of LSU.
Yeah, absolutely love that. So let's go. Ricky Pearsall's not had as much love on the show. People chatting about him as much. So tell me, why do you like Ricky Pearsall so much?
He just gets open.
Yeah.
He's incredibly quick. He's incredibly agile, and he's got hands that I don't know what they're made out of. Like I don't know if he just dips his hands and like stick them before the games, or how that works. But go ahead and go watch. I think it was UCF that Florida was playing last year, and it looked like a in breaking route. He's right down the seam, balls over his head, poorly
Yeah.
thrown. He leaps and makes this incredible Odell Beckham style one handed grab. We saw those plays happening at the Senior Bowl practices too. It's not a fluke. The kid has
No.
got absolutely bananas hands. They're incredible. He can catch anything thrown in his zip code. You got to love those guys. He worked out really well at the combine. He has the physical attributes. He's got the hands. He just gets open. Like there's no reason not to take that guy up.
Better catch in the year, Ricky Pearsall's one, or the catch Keon Coleman made in week 2?
I don't know, man. That Pearsall catch is iconic.
Yeah.
I'm going Pearsall as much as I love Coleman. Sorry, Keon. I hope you're not watching.
Yeah, well, if he is, I've said some things about him on the last show, so hopefully he's not. He's.
I mean, I took him earlier.
Yeah,
So
that's
hopefully
true.
that would offset.
Yeah, Pearsall edges it for me as well, though. I think that's just looked slightly more difficult, but Coleman's catch still absolutely hot like the mustard, right? Just brilliant. So
Oh yeah.
who's coming out the next 3 picks in the second round then?
Let's get back into running back. I think Trey Benson's a player that
Yep.
needs to be considered. Let's see here. I'm kind of shooting down my rankings list here. Give me Roman Wilson out of Michigan,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and I'm going to do this for my buddy Jordan. Jordan Vanek. I obviously name dropped him twice now. Give me Xavier Legette. He loves this guy.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, let's chat about your buddy's player then. See if you're Leggett, because I mean, 4 weeks in, 5 weeks into the college football season, people have got locked into their first round already. He sort of fell off a little bit, but he definitely showed enough talent there that he's going to help the team out, right?
Absolutely. So here's the thing. His film's hard to watch because the quarterback play was really bad. I don't care
Yeah.
what people say about Spencer Rattler moving up boards and this and that. The kid didn't put enough on film for me to feel comfortable that he's an NFL quarterback.
Mhm.
Xavier Legette is a big-bodied guy that can catch just about anything. He runs with incredible power. He blocks downfield, which is going to be great for some of those more hard-nosed coaches. Think about a guy like Mike Tomlin putting Legette on the field, where this guy's going to get downfield. He's going to block. He's going to work hard on his routes. He's going to catch the football and run with some aggressiveness. That's all Xavier Legette. Big knock on him for me, though. It seems like he may have trouble diagnosing where to stop against zone coverage. He runs out of one zone into another, and he doesn't find good spots to sit down. And I really want to see that get cleaned up a little bit. And NFL coaching could help change some of that. It's a pretty minor thing, all in all. The other part is few injury history issues. At the Senior Bowl, he got his hand stepped on. That really impeded his ability to make some plays. He also had a calf strain or something. He had a sleeve on the whole week. Couple little hangups there where I'm like, this is a bigger bodied guy, kind of plays a lot of violence. Is he going to be on the field enough? And that's why for me, he slips into this, mid-second round area, and he's not a first rounder, but great hands, great athleticism. I think he made Spencer Rattler look good, not just for the Gamecocks, but also during Senior Bowl week. When you pulled Legette off the field, Rattler's play wasn't nearly the same. So I think that goes a long way. If you really like Rattler, you probably really like Xavier Legette.
And I just feel with a guy like Legette, a lot of these NFL teams have got like a Xavier Legette shaped hole in their roster. Like there's not a lot of guys, especially the last year's draft class. A lot of these receivers, sort of smaller kind of guys, like not really someone who has that skill set like Legette has. So I can see him going earlier in the draft than maybe people are talking about now, just because teams are going to look at him and go like, we could use a guy just like that.
I think a team like Miami, where they try to use him
Yeah.
like a Debo type player, could use him
Yeah.
because they've got the wheels with Hill. Waddle is a kind of a more well-rounded, but still a faster guy. Then you couple Legette in there as a power guy. They want to spread you out anyway, so I don't think that's a terrible collection of guys to have.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think Legette is obviously, and they brought in someone like a Chase Claypool, so they're obviously thinking about it, right? So
Yep.
Legette is an interesting choice there for me. I really like that actually. So yeah, hopefully he gets a good spot like Miami. So who's coming off the next group of three at 2-7, 2-8, and 2-9?
Let's see here. Who am I missing on my big board? Did I already say Marshawn Lloyd?
You
We get him in there.
have not said Marshawn Lloyd, no.
Let's get Marshawn Lloyd in there.
Yep.
Let's get Jatavian Sanders, tight end out of Texas.
Yep.
And I think we're going to finally break down and do it with Lad McConkey.
Ooh. So Lad McConkey is, I mean, all over the place in where he is being drafted. I have never seen anything like this. Do you think you can maybe put your finger on why I'm seeing Lad McConkey go in round 1, 2, and 3? Because that is very rare.
He doesn't have a ton of production. And I think a big part of that is Brock Bowers was like a vacuum cleaner. He ate up a ton of that passing game production. There also isn't exactly elite quarterback play happening at Georgia. All due respect to Carson Beck and Stetson Bennett and those guys, like it just hasn't been. This is a player where you have to recognize what he is from a trait standpoint. He is a slot receiver who can give you some snaps on the perimeter. He does a nice job getting open. He's quicker than he is fast, to use an old Mike Mayock term. He's got reliable hands. Problem is, he's always on the ground. This guy gets knocked down, bumped, hits the floor way too frequently. That's why, for me, he's not a first rounder, and he's in the back half of the second round here. The only reason I'm going Glad McConkey here instead of, say, Xavier Worthy is because I feel like McConkey's the guy that's going to, wherever he goes, if he gets a chance to play, he'll end up being like a PPR monster. He'll just vacuum up all those targets. That's where, we saw it with Hunter Renfrow a couple of years ago, right? When he caught 100 balls or so.
Yeah.
Hunter Renfrow's best season is probably what Lad McConkey's prime looks like. He'll have 3 or 4 of those. I love that for him, and I love it for fantasy. We got to recognize the fact that he's not a 10-year prospect. He's not a guy that's going to give you a ton of big playability, but he can give you 100 catches for 900 yards, and you can feel pretty good about that as your wide receiver 3 or 4.
Yeah, he's someone. I think it's completely like dependent on where he goes. He could end up being that Hunter Renfrow, or he could end up being Hunter Renfrow, right?
And that could be a good or a bad thing simultaneously. So there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's both sides of the Hunter Renfro coin. Hopefully, he gets at least 1 year like Hunter had there. So Labo Conky going in the second round. You got 3 more picks left of that second round. Who's your final 3?
Let's go with Xavier Worthy,
Yep.
Ben Sinnott from Kansas State.
Ooh,
And,
nice.
this is tough. I'm going to skip over a few players on my big board to get to this guy, but give me Malachi Corley out of Western
Okay.
Kentucky.
All right. So I'm trying to think who's never. Ben Sinnott has never been spoken about on the show. No one's ever got to Ben Sinnott. He's my tight end 3 as well, though. So I'm interested to hear someone else talk about Ben Sinnott.
Yeah. All due respect to Will Howard and the guys over at K-State, I don't think they did a good enough job leveraging Sinnott as a player. This is a guy that can play with the ball in his hands. He does a nice job at the catch point. He knows where to sit down in zone. There's not enough clips of it because they just didn't leverage him enough. But you see the traits, you see the skill set, and it kind of makes you wonder if this guy played at Iowa, would he be a first round dynasty pick? Would he have been a sweetheart of the draft? And I think that's probably true, but he played at K State, and now he's probably a third or fourth round in most dynasty drafts. Me, I'm going to take him late too, just to make sure I get him, assuming I don't already have a tight end on my roster.
Yeah, I think Sinnott's a guy that'll come in. He'll maybe sit for a little while, and then you can see him really explode and use that athleticism that he's got. I think he's just super solid, and yeah, he's kind of gone sneakily under the radar as well. I know he's in a little bit of a battle with Cade Stover for that number 3 spot, but I've got Sinnott over him currently, so I'm really glad to see him being spoken about on the show. And Jeff, before we let you go, we have to talk about everyone's favorite thing is always talking about sleeper picks. Everyone's got their guys. I mentioned Cody Schrader earlier. I've got Anaya Smith as well, my guys that I just love chatting about. Do you have any sleeper guys that you just like want to chat about and I don't think are getting enough love?
Ooh. I like Cody Schrader also. I'll leave him alone because that's your guy. Give me Dylan Lobby.
Ooh.
So Dylan Lobby out of New Hampshire is a running back that possesses a Danny Woodhead style skill set. For those of you old enough to remember Danny Woodhead, he is, or was, I should say, a tremendous pass catcher who could run with some toughness between the tackles. Wasn't a big guy, didn't offer great size, great speed, or any of that kind of stuff. Dylan Lobby checks all the boxes, good to very good, except for receiving. This guy runs routes like a receiver, and he can catch the ball like a receiver. That's what separates him. He's going to have a role in the NFL somewhere. He'll be a late round pick to somebody. He's going to pop up to me. I'm happy to steal him in the third or fourth round somewhere, especially if I have some extra picks from trades. Really love the kid. Absolute throwback, hard worker type. Had a chance to talk to his dad and his brother at Senior Bowl. Great family tree. It's a situation where I showed up to the stadium early. I was like the first guy at the stadium in the morning because I used to coach football, and I want to see who the first guy out of the tunnel is. I want to know who wants it, who's out there working first. And Dylan Lobby, without fail, all 3 days of practice was the first guy on the field stretching, running some routes with himself, getting some jog in, getting that lather on before practice started. Guy loves the game. He's just that hard nose, but still a receiver. Gosh, I just love him, and I hope he does well.
Yeah, that is something that coaches just love, right? Like that kind of thing. Like with Romo Dunze at the combine, right? He kept doing that 3-cone. He kept at it. You just know there's so many coaches just put a massive tick right next to his name after that, right?
Yep, I love guys who want to put in the work, and that's where that old ball coach comes out, and he does. And there's I think it's John Vogel, Draft Vogel on Twitter. He has a great video of Lobby basically showing him how he runs a particular route, and he was super personable, nice guy,
Yeah.
exceptional receiver level acumen for how to run the routes, how to get open, and you don't see that with running backs very often. So love Dylan Lobby, especially if I can get him a little later.
Yeah, absolutely love that. First mention on the show for Dylan Lobby, so I'm going to be keeping an eye for him for sure, Jeff. So that brings us to the end of the show. Jeff, just wanted to say thank you so much once again for coming on to the Dynasty Hotseat. Can you just remind everybody where can they find all your work online?
Sure. Yeah. My Twitter handle's on the screen here, NFL_DiMatteo. Follow me there. You're going to see a lot of updates for my website, gridironratings.com. Getting ready to launch a bunch of our rookie content. It's a little different than everybody else's. I'm not going to inundate you with 1,000 and 2,000 word scouting reports. Instead, building infographics and laying out all of the information you might need to know about a rookie and how he fits into your dynasty roster in quick snippets and pictures and graphs, charts, make it really easy for you. So you can, absorb 10 to 20,000, words of information in just a couple of minutes. And but yeah, that's where we'll be at. So keep an eye out on Twitter for the updates of when those go live, and gridironratings.com. That's the spot.
Absolutely. Make sure you're going to check that out. Brilliant. Just to be able to summarize all that information into those graphics is really beneficial for a lot of guys out there. So thank you so much for all of that work, Jeff. And thank you as well to everybody watching. If you are a returning listener, of course, thank you so much for listening once again. And if you're new and you've not already, remember, that like and that subscribe button. They're right there. They're right under there. You can do it. I believe in you. You can press it. So, Jeff, one more time, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And remember, for anything Dynasty you need to know, keep it locked on the Certified Inferno. And we'll see you next time.